We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
I'm Richard Wells.
And we have a couple guests with us today.
I'm Derek Sams.
And I'm Laura Sams.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Blue Lagoon on July 2nd, 1980. It was written by Douglas Day Stewart, based on a novel by Henry de Vere Stacpoole, directed by Randal Kleiser, and released by Columbia Pictures. In 1908, Henry de Vere Stacpoole's Blue Lagoon novel was published. It was the first in a trilogy, followed by The Garden of God and The Gates of Morning. It was first adapted in a 1923 silent film starring Molly Adair and my new favorite name, Dick Crookshanks.
Nice.
The producer Herbert Wilcox bought the rights to the film in 1935, announcing a forthcoming remake, but plans fell apart and the rights were sold to Gainsborough Pictures, who announced their remake in 1938, but eventually the film was postponed for World War II. And then in 1947, Frank Launder was attached to direct, and the second adaptation was released in 1949, starring Gene Simmons, not that Gene Simmons, and Donald Houston. The 1980 remake was a passion project of director Randal Kleiser's. The original plan was for neither actor to ever wear clothes in the film, which is why Jennifer Jason Leigh turned it down at the request of her father, Vic Morrow, who we had earlier this year in Humanoids from the Deep.
Do we know how old I was just going to ask.
About the same age.
So she was also around 14?
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
So did Diane Lane and Lori Loughlin and Isabella Johnny. They all turned it down because of the permanent nudity requirement.
Which obviously went away at some point.
Yes. Obviously, they got rid of that, and then they auditioned Kelly Preston, Linda Blair, Jodie Foster, Tatum O'Neal, Michelle Pfeiffer, Daryl Hannah, Rosanna Arquette, Melissa Sue Anderson, Kim Basinger, Ellen Barkin, Justine Bateman, Delta Burke, Jamie Lee Curtis, Bridget Fonda, Melanie Griffith, Angelica Houston, Kay Lenz, Mariel Hemingway, Christy McNichol, Amy Irving, and Sarah Jessica Parker.
Wow.
All of them actually came in and did auditions for it.
You know,
the age range of that group.
Yeah, Angelica Houston seems older
Ellen
than
Barkin.
that group. Yeah.
Well, and Sarah, I was going to say Sarah Jessica Parker, but her name is actually Sarah Jessica Parker.
She was young.
She's got to be she probably was only,
because this
10.
is pre-Square Pegs.
Yeah. And God, what, Flight of the Navigator was 85?
45,
she was...
Same director.
Yeah. She wasn't very old in that.
Kathleen Turner apparently flubbed her audition, and Sean Young came in to try for it and almost went full Catwoman. She auditioned 5 times and was pushing very hard to play this role, but it didn't work out for her. Carrie Fisher turned it down because she had a commitment to The Empire Strikes Back.
Good choices.
But otherwise, she would have been down to do it, presumably.
Yeah, there were some good choices in there, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some ones that I think could have done as well as Brooke Shields did.
Yeah. And on the DVD release, they actually feature a screen test of Lou Diamond Phillips and Molly Ringwald, who came in for multiple rounds of auditions.
Okay, I don't think I would have gone with Molly Ringwald.
I don't think I would have gone with Lou Diamond Phillips either.
Well, yes, that too.
Yeah,
I also don't think that they play off as cousins.
No, they don't look anything alike.
But the male lead was turned down by Willie Ames and Matt Dillon because of back when it was fully nude. But in the end, Chris Atkins won over Sean Penn, who was the second choice.
Wow, Sean Penn.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
We could have had a Little Darlings rematch with
Matt Dillon and McNichol or Tatum O'Neal.
Yeah, well, either, yeah.
Yeah. A previously undiscovered species of iguana was captured in the film that herpetologists later found in Fiji and named the Fiji crested iguana. So someone was watching the movie and was like, that doesn't exist yet. They flew out to find it.
Why wouldn't they name it after the movie?
I don't know. I feel like they should have.
Blue Lagoon, or the director or something.
Iguana.
Brooke, do you want an iguana after you?
The Brooke Shields iguana.
Randal Kleiser took issue with the critics who labeled the film kiddie porn on its release, insisting that all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s nude scenes were performed by the film's 32-year-old stunt coordinator, Kathy Trout. But I looked up her website, and her face looks nothing like S.H.I.E.L.D.'s. And in fact, on her own site, it says At Dunk Island, Kathy was hired to do nude stand-in for the lead female actress, but at the last moment, the plan was changed and the actor performed her own nude underwater sequence. However, Kathy received enormous advance publicity. So I don't know if that was just to be safe. They said that someone did it.
Well, I was reading that Brooke Shields had to be in front of Congress, and she had to say that all of her scenes were in fact done by a stunt double, and I guess for legal reasons they just had to do that. But
she actually got called in front of Congress to make
I
those
read
comments?
that somewhere.
Wow, that's crazy.
But for legal reasons, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily believe that they did that for all the scenes just for convenience sake, but you know.
And there's some scenes that are just blatantly her
yeah.
that are clearly not a double.
Yeah,
so.
things that
they didn't have the
glue
computer
were
visual
going
effects that we do now,
Yeah.
where you could just put somebody else's face on a different body.
Well, and for that matter, when you're filming, there's definitely scenes where you're cutting together stunt double footage with her footage, but she is naked in the footage where she's, coming up through the water. And so you're cutting between these scenes. You probably have footage of her naked and you're just like, well, this worked better than the other one. I'm just going to use that. Because when you're in the cutting room at that point, you're just like, I'm going to use what works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The film was obviously followed by Return to the Blue Lagoon with Brian Krause and Mia Jovovich, which we'll discuss a little bit after the film.
Right.
Would you say it's followed when it's 11 years later?
Was it 11 years
Yeah,
later?
it was 91, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I would say like 82 or 83 would be followed by, but not 1991.
Yeah. It was also followed by the Blue Lagoon, The Awakening, a Lifetime movie that we won't discuss after this. Beyond mentioning that it did feature Chris Atkins in a small cameo role. He was like a teacher on the boat before it sank.
Wait a
I was going to
minute.
say, how much of a cameo could you play on a desert island?
he was an iguana in this one. Yeah.
He just like pops out and waves at them and then ducks back into the jungle. So we open the film with a colorized illustration of Victorian-era Boston that looks strikingly like the Cheers
It
introduction.
really does. That's what we thought
I started
too.
singing the theme song while we were watching it.
Yeah, me too.
Seriously.
We push in on an illustrated ship at sea, and then we fade to The Real Thing, where Arthur Lestrange reprimands his son and niece for balancing precariously on the bow of a ship. We learn quickly that they are San Francisco bound, or San Francisco, as Richard insists on calling it.
San Francisco.
And we learn that Richard's mother is dead, and Emmeline's parents are both dead.
So are we to understand that they are sailing from Boston
Yes.
to San Francisco?
Yes.
Around South America.
Right, of course. But then they somehow ended up on some other tropical island
It's probably
somewhere?
the Caribbean or
Yeah.
something.
But you think they would be steering pretty close to land overall, right?
I don't know. Also, when this is taking place, do you think that is there like a historical explanation for why 3 of these 4 parents would have been killed in some way? Or are we to understand that Arthur murdered these 3 people and took the kids?
Well, it's a
no
timely thing to talk about during the COVID situation.
Yeah.
So maybe something's happening in their time.
Another crew member on this ship, Paddy Button, gives the kids a grumpy look on his way back below deck. Arthur moves downstairs to inform the captain of an incoming fog bank, which hasn't been super lucky this year so far. We had Ted Stryker had a fog bank in Airplane, but he sort of crash landed the plane. It was okay. And then Father Malone didn't fare too well in the fog.
Yeah.
You mean there was a fog bank in the fog?
Yeah.
There's a fog bank out there.
Richard finds a stack of nudie pics in Paddy's drawer, and he gets a spanking for it. And then when Emmeline interrupts, he winds up to spank her as well when we hear people screaming about a fire below deck. And Paddy is instantly freaked out about it, and everyone's scrambling to get off the ship.
Yeah, I think somebody yells that there's like powder kegs down there.
Yeah, there's powder kegs in the hold.
So it's not like they're running around to put out the fire. They're just trying to get off the ship.
Before it goes
Yeah.
kaboom.
Yeah, and so the kids are separated from their father-uncle, and the ship explodes, and then in the smoke, the lifeboats are drifting apart, and they're calling to each other, but for whatever reason, they're not able to track the sound well enough to stay close to one another. They end up floating for days on the water, and it's just a boat with Paddy, Emmeline, and Richard until they awaken one morning off the coast of an island. and rush to shore.
Well, they did, shortly after the explosion, there was some wreckage in the sea. And
Right.
so they were able to...
One box of luggage.
Yeah, they lassoed on a trunk that was floating nearby. So they had some stuff, but there was no food or water in it.
I think there was a little bit of food, unless he brought that food with him.
Yeah, there was a can of something on the
I don't know
boat,
where it came
on the
from.
boat, but
He's very sloppily eating this tuna, though, considering
Yes.
there's a very
Was that
finite
tuna?
amount of food. That's
I
what
don't
it
know.
looked like.
Like sardines or
But he's like-
something. Canned fish.
Yeah, and he's just tucking it into his mouth and letting bits of it fall into the lifeboat. It's like, be more careful. That's all of your
Yes.
food. Once they get on shore of this island, Paddy quickly locates bananas and drinkable water. They find like a waterfall with some bananas growing over it. In exchange, Emmeline finds a barrel of rum, and Richard presents him with a lovely human skull. Paddy is terrified.
Well, and it's important to note at that point, neither of the kids knows what that thing is that they found. Like, she doesn't know what
Right.
rum is. He doesn't know
Yeah.
what a skull is, which is, yeah, we get a hint. We start to realize just how sheltered these kids have been.
Right.
I don't know that it's sheltered. I imagine it's sometime between 1850 and turn of the century. And so I just don't think that, however old these kids are, 8 to 10 years old, like they've had a very broad education.
But I did like that the way Emmeline describes the barrel is she says, "Oh, I found a barrel and it smells like the captain's breath."
Yes.
And immediately Paddy's like, "What? Where is
yeah.
it?"
Yeah.
I'm surprised Richard didn't know what a skull was, though. Like, even to have any idea, because even at that age, they would have had some kind of schooling, some kind of biology.
Yeah. And earlier, when they're on the boat, he doesn't know what a shark is either. And it's like, kids know what sharks are. Like, kids of all ages know what sharks are.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're looking at this from the perspective of our own generations, where we have
The internet.
lots of books and the internet and all sorts of things where we have exposure to a lot of information. And I think back then you still didn't have a lot of information widely spread.
But I think before we knew about dinosaurs, the first thing a kid wants to know about is sharks.
or pirates. Like,
Yeah.
I
If
mean,
you
Boston's
live-
a port town. I mean, there's got to be old talks of pirate stories and skull and crossbones and things like that,
I
right?
suppose, but I don't
mean-
think there's a lot of sharks in Boston. Maybe there
Yeah,
are.
but
I don't
like,
know.
if you look at
Sharks and Amity.
I guess.
if you look at a lot of things, like
far.
I guess Peter Pan is from a similar time, early 1900s, and from that, like, the kids know who they know what pirates are. They know about, I mean, for them they say engines and so many things going on. And then if you go back even further, go back to like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, like they're aware, like they would have known what a skull was, and that was years and years before.
Sure, yeah.
So I think we're kind of getting an idea of like that these kids maybe are especially unaware, more so than most.
Yeah, they do seem like they're rich kids that kind of protected.
Or maybe he just didn't pay attention in school and he was just that
Well,
type.
they just inherited a lot of money, so they're very rich now. Paddy catches Emmeline trying to eat what he calls never wake up berries out of a bush, and he sweeps them out of her mouth with a finger. The next day, Richard is enjoying some of the stereography that survived the trip to the beach. And while he's looking at some wedding pictures, he asks Paddy if he ever got married. And he says,
7 times. Kids in every port from Callao to Macau. 17 at the last count.
I just thought that was funny that he has so many kids. Because he seems like a decent dad to these two, but he was such a terrible father to all of his actual kids. We get a montage of Paddy teaching the kids life skills, fishing, knots, shelter construction. Paddy has to chase them across the beach because they don't want to go in the water, but then later he has to chase them to put their clothes back on because they just want to swim.
Oh, that's where Richard says, I think, I'm never wearing those old breeches again, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't, yeah.
Yeah.
He's just running
Way to
around.
stick to your guns. Yeah.
One day, carrying bananas through the jungle, Paddy stumbles upon a native temple with human remains splayed across a platform, and he's obviously terrified and backs away from it and goes back to their camp. In their beach home that night, he tells the kids that this is where the boogeyman lives, and if they know what law is, that the law says stay away from this area.
But he's really doing them a disservice here by
Right.
not being honest, because he doesn't realize that he's not going to be around all that time, and
Yeah.
he needs to educate them as much as possible now.
Which is kind of against what he's been doing so far. He's been very, very honest with them
Yeah.
about everything. I mean, maybe he doesn't know the terminology of everything. Like, those are never wake up berries. You're going to be dead and buried. Like, he's very brutally honest with them. But the fact that he won't be honest about this, that there are bad people over there, stay over here.
Yeah.
Is kind of
I get
odd.
the impression his intention was to eventually revise this mythology with, no, there's actually people over there and they'll kill you, but you don't know
Yeah,
about that yet.
probably
I'm
just in the
using
moment.
the boogeyman because I know you're kids and you're scared of
Yes. Paddy is really trying to obviously trying to protect them and just using language that he thinks would be useful. But I agree with you, Richard. Like at some point he was probably going to tell them more, but they're all still trying to figure out what is this island about. And most importantly, I want to get off this island. The sooner the better. And hopefully we don't have to get to that point on revealing who these boogeyman really are.
Right. But unfortunately, later that night, Paddy gets excessively drunk from the barrel, and he dresses in all the women's clothes he could find in the luggage and dances to entertain the kids for a while. And then using the barrel as a flotation device, he kicks his way across the lagoon to a smaller island that's just offshore, and he just drinks there through the night. And the next morning, Richard sees him sleeping over there, and he's like, oh, let's go surprise him. They take the lifeboat across the shore, and when they roll him over, his face is like gray-black, and a crab crawls out of his dead mouth.
Yeah.
And it's... I feel bad for the actor that he had to have a live crab in his mouth.
Yeah, but you also let our 4-year-old son watch this scene with you. And,
yeah, he liked it.
Well, Jack's like, I wouldn't put a crab in my mouth.
Good, Jack.
A cooked crab from boiling crab.
No, you don't understand. He got paid extra, Jack.
But they just abandon the body.
Yeah, they leave him there. I mean, what are they going to do with it?
They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's just...
If they can even lift him.
That's true. That's true.
They row to another part of the island to even escape his memory. Like, they're like, we're not even going to go back to the house that we shared with him. We're going to go to the other side of the island now.
Which I think is impressive because these kids are still really young and they have to start over.
Yeah.
Like, they're not using any of the shelter he built. They didn't even take the pieces with them.
And the new one they built is much better anyway.
It's got a slide.
We get a quick Hakuna Matata montage as they're swimming naked and they age 5 or 6 years. We're getting a hint of Dumbo's baby mind from the score here, I thought.
Oh, but, I kept saying that as well. The little motif. Yeah.
It just sounded a little bit like it to me. Richard sets up Christmas morning for them. They both mention having weird feelings about each other on Christmas. Spoiling the holiday. That night, they try to sing Christmas songs and quickly realize that they don't actually know any of them all the way through.
Oh, come, all ye faithful. La, 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 la. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. La, 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 la. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. All the...
I did like how M is like, just like, I don't know the rest, and just like laughing and smiling through the rest of the song. M goes diving privately and experiences her first period and calls to Richard for help, but then when he gets there, she suddenly does not want his help anymore. It's like she's somehow come to terms with it, and it's like, no, never mind, go away, leave me alone. Richard's upset because he doesn't keep secrets from her, and he wants to know why she's bleeding.
I think we should talk about this a little bit, though,
sure.
Because I think it's interesting to her make that sort of transition so quickly between yelling for help and then saying, no, never mind, I'm fine, I don't want your help, leave me alone. Because I feel like
she would still want his help when he got there because she doesn't know what's going on.
She doesn't know what's going on, and she's not in pain, obviously, but there's going to be a lot of blood, and she's not sure why. So I feel
like she would be asking for help and trying to solve this mystery with him.
Yeah, exactly. And the only other person you're there with, you rely on them for everything. You would say, hey, I'm experiencing this right now. What the hell is this?
Yeah, and also it wouldn't be in just that moment, right? Like it would be several days.
Right.
And it's interesting that doesn't come back up. It's like the next scene, I think, he comes back to her and says, why were you bleeding? She's like, I don't know. And then it's like, like, aren't you still bleeding?
Yeah, I mean, let's also consider the novel was written by a man, the film was directed by a man, and the screenplay was written by a man. Not that men can't do some basic research, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if these guys might just have not thought that through.
Yeah. Why bother doing the research?
I also think it's interesting to think about it in terms of shame because...
that she's instantly embarrassed by
why are these guys ashamed of their bodies at all? They've been not ashamed up until this point for any reason. So why would they suddenly think, not knowing that this was about sexual maturity, think of this as a shameful thing?
Right.
Yeah, it is weird. It like the implication of the story is that that shame is a natural progression of maturity, which it's not. Not in this situation.
Right.
But the author was just like, it's a period, so it's a small period of time, about 4 or 5 minutes.
And then she's angry.
That's how ladies work.
That's all I remember. Before my wife left. One afternoon, he asks Em where her father is, and she says that, wait, whose parents are dead? Her parents are both dead.
Her parents are dead.
Okay,
His
so
father.
He asks her where her parents are, and she says same place as your parents, but he's insisting that his father is coming back for them. But she assumed that he died when the ship exploded.
Can we take this moment and pay homage to Boy Meets World right now? Because Mr. Feeney...
Yeah, to Mr. Feeney?
...plays Mr. Lestrange, Richard's father.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
I wanted to mention that Richard is talking about... Sorry, I also get very confused when we keep talking about Richard.
Me too.
it's like Richard doesn't know what a skull is. Yes, I do. No, Richard is like wanting to know about what's happening to his body.
This is embarrassing. He talks about himself in the third person.
Talk about shame.
He says there's all these weird hairs growing on me, but like Brooke Shields is like, oh, my legs are perfectly shaved all the time.
Right. I tried to see if like she was completely hairless, and of course she is. She's like perfect. But she was also 14 when she filmed this, which you still will get things happening to your body.
And he never grows a beard.
Beard. Yeah, he's supposed to be like 18.
But he's only like, what, 16 at the end of this? Like, some people don't grow their beards until they're 20s.
Pretty young. He's also blonde, so there were a couple of scenes where I thought there might have been some peach fuzz at least growing, but it was really light. So maybe part of it.
And all that sun.
Well, you could definitely see, like in some of the shots of Brooke Shields when they're closer up on her face, you can see that this must have been really late in the filming because her hair is very blonde.
Yeah,
like underneath the hair, like it's like the sun is starting to, and the salt water is probably really starting to damage it.
Yeah. One night, while Em tries to cheer Richard up during dinner, they hear drum beats off in the distance, and they know that there's other people on this island. I'm assuming they're attributing these sounds to the boogeyman at this point. And then Richard catches Em floating around in bioluminescent algae later.
I'm not so sure that is bioluminescent
literally
algae.
Rewound it to check, and I was like, wait, is that what that is? But
that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, it's obviously a digital effect, but that Patrick was saying that he thought it was supposed to be bioluminescence, and I don't know.
Are you saying it's just like a Xanadu like fantasy picture of her?
No, I don't think it's like, we're not trying to turn on neon signs here, but I feel like they were just trying to emphasize the moonlight on the water, and they just did a poor job of it.
No.
I thought bioluminescent algae as well.
Yeah.
I have the note.
I thought that at first, and Derek, what did you think? I thought you might have said something about maybe the lighting was just...
I thought it was just the way they were adjusting the lighting on camera just to make it look, I don't know, like a Xanadu fantasy sequence.
All right. Well, then now it's 3-2, so you guys win. Normally we outnumber Jess on this.
Well, also,
I thought it was bioluminescence.
Oh, okay. There we go. Then it's 3-2.
Damn
we win.
It. There's also it could be because it was clearly like day for night. So that could have been the sun hitting the water.
Yeah.
In weird ways.
So it was definitely a visual effect.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, for sure.
No, well, yeah, but I mean, but maybe they were trying to.
They were tinted it blue, so it'd be moonlight.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it was algae. It kind of reminds me of effects that he uses in other movies, like in Flight of the Navigator, like weird lightning effects that are in that movie and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And also when the ship is changing shape, sometimes it has that
but
quantum leap glow.
But that was computer effects.
Yeah, totally. They hear the drumming again during the day, and Em follows it into the jungle. And when she finds the source of the mysterious sound, the sacrificial platform, she is fascinated, and she looks at this very large facial statue and assumes that this is God's face, and that maybe Paddy was mistaken when he said that the boogeyman lives out here. Richard is not interested in heading out there.
Yeah, he's very much more law-based, it seems. He's like, but the law.
Yeah.
Is this sort of supposed to be like an Adam and Eve situation?
Yeah. Em has a nightmare that Richard ate the never wake up berries, and then in the morning she kisses him when she learns it's a dream, but then she shakes him off when he takes it a little further than she intended.
Women.
Yeah. The next few nights she catches him creeping on her while she sleeps. And then in the morning, frustratedly masturbating into the ocean when all of his approaches are refuted.
I was like, dude, when a wave comes back up on you, you're going to be not in a good situation.
I regret this decision. Hunting for supplies one day, he notices a ship. And she sees it too, but she intentionally doesn't light the signal fire because I think she would rather be on this island with Richard. She's not interested in getting rescued even at this point. But in response, Richard is very angry, and he builds a series of failed ships to escape the island, to go to San Francisco on his own without her help. M mocks Richard for trying to escape as the boat collapses under him, and he complains about all these secrets that she's keeping, and she tells him that she knows secrets that he keeps too, and mocks him for his masturbation and throws a coconut at his head and gives him a concussion.
Yeah, I was slightly concerned about this.
Yes.
Because he seems like unconscious at first, and then he like kind of comes out of it. But then he kicks her out of the house. Even though they built it together, he's like, I did more work than you did. Get out. Move somewhere else.
Well, he gives her a good backhand, too.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, dude, come on.
Real nice.
Man, it's like, guys, get it on already.
One day, exploring the reef, Em steps on a rockfish, and she collapses into a fever, so she finds a nice comfy bed of rocks to lay on. And then when Richard finds her, she's like just sweating profusely and like on the edge of death, and she says,
Take me to God.
Which means take me to the other side of the island that you think we're not supposed to go to.
It wasn't an invitation for sex?
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't take it that way at first.
She was frail.
But he drags her out into the jungle, and he places her in front of the enormous face carving on the sacrifice platform.
And prays.
And she later wakes up seemingly cured of the fever while he's just sitting there like sponge bathing her, basically.
Yeah. Well, I laughed at his prayer because it's kind of like the Christmas Christmas music, the Christmas songs, where she's like, I don't remember the rest. And so he's just kind of combining a bunch of stuff that he learned as a kid. And then at the end, amen. It's just like, there's my prayer. I don't remember much. I don't know how to do this, but God, if you're real.
Yeah, and wasn't there a with liberty and justice for all in there or something?
Yeah.
pretty hilarious.
I was Googling at that point. I'm like, when did the Pledge of Allegiance get written?
Oh, did you find out?
Yes, but now I have to re-Google it because my memory is not that good.
It was before when this takes place, I assume.
Yeah, I want to say it was 1890 something. But I don't think it's super clear in this movie as to when it's taking place, because we know it's before 1914 because that's when the Panama Canal opened. It sounds like it's after 1892 because that is when the Pledge of Allegiance was written, and it was probably before. When was the book written? 1904? What did you say?
Yeah,
1908.
1908.
1908. So it's sometime between 1892 and 1908.
But it had to be in the early 1980s because that's when that iguana was discovered. The two of them split a sticky melon, and when Richard asks for a kiss, she reluctantly gives in, just tired of fighting him on this. We get a long montage of Em and Richard being increasingly romantic and eventually blatantly sexual with each other. From photographs they found in their luggage, they deduced that the next step in their relationship is to get married, or to approximate marriage as best they can alone on an island. So they get dressed up in their fancy clothes and have like a tiny wedding in the house. One morning, Richard finds Em vomiting into the water, and then she starts shunning his advances moving forward for a while. And he's very upset about it, and he keeps asking why she doesn't want to do it anymore. And she says, I don't know, but it hurts, and you can feel it if you want to. And she invites him to feel the baby kicking.
So I don't know how accurate this is because, one, I don't think that it would hurt her. And two, you actually get more amorous when you're pregnant.
I've heard this too.
Well, again, this was written by a man in 1908 who had once heard about a woman somewhere. Richard hears more chanting this same night from the other side of the island, and he freaks out looking for Em. He scrambles into the forest because she's just missing, and he finds the other island tribe, and they're performing a ritual sacrifice, and they're decapitating a guy on the platform. But the way they're decapitating him looks like the worst way to decapitate a person. It's like they're pushing, like it's like a dull stick that they're pushing against his neck to take his head off.
No. They were holding
That's
his
what I
head
thought,
down
too.
with that stick and then bludgeoning him on the head with another one.
Oh, I thought they were literally like hammering the thing that was on his head.
That was just to hold his neck down
What
while
Jesse
they
said.
slammed him on the head. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That makes more sense.
So maybe he's not decapitated.
This is one of the scenes where I get confused with the other movie.
With Return to the Blue Lagoon?
I get a lot of the scenes confused with the other movie.
Because I was like, I thought one of the natives sees him and doesn't give him up. But I was like, oh no,
that's the other one.
That happens in the other one.
Yeah.
I have actually never seen any of these movies before watching this one just several days ago.
Yeah.
So I don't get the scenes mixed up, but the whole time I was expecting something else to happen with these natives.
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
It never really does. Like this is like the last
the tribe never pays
they
off.
really have.
Yeah, he runs off. And I hadn't seen this movie for like years and years and years. And then when we rewatched it, I was really sure that at some point those boogeymen were going to come back and there was going to be a whole thing.
It also seems impossible to me that this tribe hasn't encountered them yet.
I was just going to say that.
Because they have a huge house built on the beach. There's no way they're not getting fish.
And
they're within walking distance.
And they have to be seeing smoke from at least just their basic campfire.
Right.
Yeah.
I was kind of taking it as this tribe wasn't living on that island, but maybe they sailed from like a nearby island just to that spot to do their whole sacrifice ritual thing.
Oh,
and
maybe.
Actually,
they weren't there most
Richard
of the time.
actually says that.
Oh, okay.
Richard says that at some point. He says, oh, maybe, and I think he's wrong about where they are traveling from, but he points to the little island, like where Paddy dies, and he's like, maybe they come from there, and they only come over here when they need to, do their sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
must
sense.
be why I was thinking that. Thanks.
But once he sees this guy getting beaten to death, Richard runs away, and on his way back to the house finds Emmeline giving birth just in the jungle, probably to the spirit of the...
Where would you have done it?
Well, yeah, that's definitely where I would choose. Over the house with the nice bed in it, definitely the jungle.
You do it in a bathtub. You squat and...
Did she have time to choose? I mean, didn't she just go into labor? She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know that she was going to have a baby. She just kind of dropped and squatted and just was in pain. Right? Like, she didn't know that she should have gone to a different
She didn't even know a baby was coming. She didn't know what that feeling was in her chest.
It's like, I'm in pain. I'm going to sit here.
There's one moment where Richard catches her eating yet another snack and just says, "You're getting fat." Poor Em.
Oh, God. But here in the span of 5 minutes, Richard has seen one man murdered and another one born. And I wondered if the implication isn't that the spirit of the guy that they just killed is going into this kid at that point.
Oh, I didn't think that, but maybe just like the cycle of life and death. Because after this, once the baby's born, you see Richard, examining his limbs and like looking at his own hands and then the baby's hands. And then right after this, he also goes back and sees the adult Paddy's skull and bones and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like just realizing mortality and then this cycle of life.
But the moment just reminded me of that song. Lightning crashes, a boogeyman dies.
Yeah, those are the words.
Is that what he says in that song?
No,
that's not how it
that
goes.
is
I
not.
was like, I don't think that's the lyrics.
I changed it a little. The baby is crying for food the next day. It hasn't had anything yet.
Well, hey, that's not weird.
That is also a very big newborn, as they always are.
Well,
that's true.
Always.
And a very, very skinny pregnant woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Babies go a day or two, even 3, without necessarily eating right away.
Yeah. But they try to feed it a few fruits that it doesn't seem interested in. And then she basically intuits the process of breastfeeding by just wanting to hold the baby, and then it starts rooting around, and they're
I find this
about that
a
too.
little unrealistic. I mean, not that they wouldn't kind of figure it out eventually, but what would happen is the baby would cry and she would just be squirting milk all over the place until she fed it. So they would figure it out that way. Not like, oh, you accidentally bit my nipple. It would be like, oh my God, I'm gushing baby food.
Yeah, because her breasts would have gotten much bigger even well before. And she probably would have been lactating even before that too, right? I mean, just by accident, just by like rolling around in the bed.
Well, once the baby was born, likely, yes.
And there are many details like that I wonder if they would have been more accurate in the book rather than in the movie. Just like with her,
that's possible.
Just like with her getting her period. I mean, in a movie, they can only show one quick scene for a story element like that. Maybe in the book, it was there were more details that were more realistic.
Yeah. But the baby latching, it's like I just thought that was so quick. Like, oh, magically latching, and you just hear real life stories of how hard it is at first, and
and all the other stuff that can go wrong in that process.
Yeah.
But this is like basically a fantasy island anyway. Like their lives would be much harder than they make it look on this island. It wouldn't just be like sandcastles and waterfall sex.
Which is why this got so
more like
panned.
Survivor. They'd have to do all these obstacle courses.
That's right. They have to vote people off eventually.
I just always go to The Simpsons of when they're on the island and Bart has this fantasy sequence of their treehouse, and Nelson goes, "How many monkey butlers will there be?"
One at first, but he'll train others.
How cool would that be, though, if on Survivor, instead of just, like, you're voted off the island, like, they just lay him down on a slab and pin his neck down with a stick? Just like, nope, we're literally going to kill you all. Even the winner at the end. That's the prize. The next day, Richard takes that lifeboat out to the small island where Paddy died, and obviously only a skeleton remains. This is at least 9 months later, probably more like a year. Or they were kids.
They were kids when
they died. Definitely longer than a year.
5 or 6 years, yeah.
But at least 9 months.
That's true. You're not wrong.
He observes the bones and he's making notes of the similarities to his own anatomy. And then he comes home and observes the same shapes in his kids' hands.
See, I was concerned by the black object inside of Paddy.
I was on my first viewing. I think on the second viewing it's just seaweed.
It's just okay. I was like, ooh, was he actually? I thought maybe that the implication was he was actually stabbed with a spear and didn't die from the drinking, that the natives had killed him with a spear. And that was the spearhead.
I think you're just writing a much more interesting
insert. Yeah, for sure. M teaches the baby how to swim.
Nirvana.
We're getting
Nevermind.
Yeah, definitely Nirvana flashbacks here.
This was really uncomfortable for me to watch. I know that you can teach babies that young to swim, but like as a mother, I would be like, yeah, I'm not letting Brooke Shields, this 14-year-old actress, put my baby underwater. Like, I do that. That's me. That's my job.
I'm going to drown my kids. We have a long montage of just general fun with baby, just playing with toys and building sandcastles.
Yeah, but we also have more swimming with baby, which one is clearly a dummy.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's really creepy.
It's like horrifying. You're dragging a corpse around into the water.
Yeah, its hair is like twice as long, and the head is like bigger than it should be for the body. It's like lolling backwards as they're swimming, holding its hands. It's very creepy.
But it's better than putting an actual baby under the water for as long as those scenes last. That was super uncomfortable.
The stuff where it's an actual baby and they're underwater is a pool. It's a swimming pool at someone's house, and then the stuff where with the dummy is the stuff that they shot on location on the beach.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
That we didn't fly a baby to Fiji and when he was a couple
the baby
months
was
old.
definitely on the island.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
The three of them are playing games in some beach mud, and they're covering all their skin with the mud until suddenly the kid stands up and says boat, because they taught this kid words that he wouldn't need first.
Well, not only did they teach him that, but like how did they... Because the only way they could show him something that they didn't already have on the island would be to potentially draw a picture. Like,
they had
sand,
a lifeboat, but it doesn't look like the ship.
Guess.
They also built a toy boat, and we kept saying, like, get the boat, get the boat.
Oh, that's true. Okay, that's fair.
But from a passing ship, noted physicist Albert Einstein notices the three of them on a beach.
Yes,
exactly what I said.
I really wish that Mr. Feeney had played Albert Einstein in something now, because he's a dead ringer in this movie.
Well, I think it's very admirable that he's been looking for them for potentially like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Like certain that they're still alive somehow.
Yeah.
In this day and age, I think you would give them 6 months and say they're gone.
Yeah. When Richard and Em see the boat, they kind of smile at each other and walk away from it, silently agreeing that this is their home and they're not going anywhere. Mr. Feeney tells the ship's crew that it couldn't possibly be them. I'm unclear why he's ruling that out. There's 3 possibilities. It's that he thinks that they have a darker skin color because they're covered in mud.
That's what I think.
Or that they saw the boat and turned and walked away, or that they have a kid.
I think it's the second and third one together.
Okay. I also think they should have been tanner from how long they've been on this island, just outside naked all the time. Em asks if they can go back to where they first found the bananas when they got to the island. When they pull the lifeboat ashore, we see that the first hut has collapsed on the beach. He asks if she's coming, and she shakes her head no. But wasn't this whole trip your idea?
And then she comes anyway.
Yeah. While they're exploring the wreckage of their past, the baby steals a branch from the never wake up bush of berries. Em and Baby distractedly float away from the shore in the lifeboat as Richard is just collecting stuff that they might need from this area. As they're floating away from the island, the baby throws an oar overboard, and this is when Em realizes how far out they are, and she can't reach it with the other oar, so she calls to Richard for help. And this is when he swims out to them, but suddenly a shark appears, and as he's climbing into the boat, Em throws the remaining oar at the approaching shark, and so oarless they continue drifting further and further from the island, where they're very slowly cooked alive and dehydrated on this boat. And one morning, Em wakes up to catch the baby eating from the branch of the never wake up berries that he found, and she can't get all the berries out of his mouth. He swallowed some of them, and then Richard peels the rest of them off the branch and splits them into 2 piles for them to commit suicide with. And they each eat their piles and go to sleep. And then the same ship with Mr. Feeney returns to find them, and when he asks if they're dead, his crewman responds,
"No, sir. They're asleep."
I wonder if that line was added.
No, it's in the book.
It's in the book.
Is
It's
it?
almost word
Okay.
for word, apparently, according to Wikipedia,
Yeah.
which I read right before this. Yeah, so and
Exactly.
it's kind of ambiguous at that point whether they would wake up again or not.
Yeah, but the
until
sequel,
a sequel book comes out.
Right.
The sequel, they're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They literally replace the line, "No, sir, they're asleep," with, "Yes, they're dead."
Yeah.
Dead, sir.
Well, that's why I was struggling to remember how this movie ended because it's been so long since I've seen it, and I've seen Return to the Blue Lagoon far more times,
Yes.
and so I couldn't remember if they were dead or not, and I think that's why, because they changed the ending.
Yeah. At the very beginning of Return, they're pulling the family out, and they literally just wrap up the parents and dump them overboard because they're dead.
I must have seen it because that's how I remembered it too. I remember getting to the end of the movie and just thinking, oh, this is going to suck because he's going to find them, but they're going to be dead. And then that line, they're asleep. I'm like, oh, I don't remember that. So I must have at some point
And
watched
apparently
Return.
the book Garden of God, which is the second book, starts out the same
Right.
way.
Yeah. The rest of it's different, but it starts that way. Basically, in the movie sequel, Return to the Blue Lagoon, they take this kid aboard and they place it with a mother who has a daughter, and then those two get stranded on the island.
Right.
Because there's like a cholera outbreak and they all have to jump ship. But in the book, the boy is shipwrecked again, and the boy ends up on the island by himself, and he falls in love with a girl from the tribe.
Oh.
So it's a completely different story for the rest of the movie, but it starts the same way.
Yeah, because honestly, the second movie is very much just the first movie again.
Yeah.
In every way.
Yep.
Like he even goes and searches the shellfish for pearls and gives them to her. It's like, do you even know what pearls are or how to get them?
Yeah.
I mean, what instinct was that, or
Right.
what made Richard in the first movie want to go
Pry open these rocks.
I'm going
at
to
the
pry
bottom
open
of
these
the water.
rocks and maybe I'll find a marble inside.
Well, I think you would probably have tried to pry them open for food because you understand that this is a sea creature and you could potentially eat it.
I would assume it was a geode.
They're all slimy inside.
Delicious.
The director here was Randal Kleiser. He directed this after Grease, and he followed up with Flight of the Navigator, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, and White Fang. The novelist Henry de Vere Stacpoole, he also has credits for the Return to the Blue Lagoon as the writer of the sequel book, Garden of God, even though it's not really based on that book. He also has lots of projects that were adapted to film in the 1920s, including later an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1960 that was adapted from something else that he wrote, a different short story. And the screenwriter here was Douglas Day Stewart. He was hired because of his work on Boy in the Plastic Bubble with John Travolta, who obviously Kleiser had worked with on Grease. He also wrote An Officer and a Gentleman and the Scarlet Letter movie, the more recent feature. The composer, Basil Polidorus, he's best known for his collaborations with John Milius and Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah.
He did Conan the Barbarian, Red Dawn, Iron Eagle, RoboCop, Hunt for Red October, Free Willy, Starship Troopers, a lot of good stuff.
Which of those were you super excited about, Richard?
RoboCop.
Okay.
Yeah.
RoboCop
it's a
theme
great
is
theme.
great.
Brooke Shields was Emmeline Lestrange. She was Suddenly Susan on the show Suddenly Susan. She's also in a movie called Alice, Sweet Alice, a.k.a. Communion, which, judging from its IMDb screen grabs, looks amazing. It's like a very early title for her, but it's insane horror film. She played Violet in Pretty Baby, which is the film that inspired her casting here. And also features full frontal nudity from her and faced the same child pornography issues that this film did. But she's 12 in that one, so I don't know what was going on at the time. Chris Atkins was Richard Lestrange. He's Frederick in the Pirate movie with Christy McNichol from Little Darlings. He's Mr. Christensen, a teacher on the boat in the Lifetime adaptation of the Blue Lagoon. Leo McKern here was Paddy Button. He plays Imperius in Lady Hawk and Cromwell in A Man for All Seasons. William Daniels was Arthur Lestrange. He's best known as Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World. Also, 1,000 Clowns, which is a favorite of mine.
And Kit.
Yep, he's Kit. He was Mr. Braddock in The Graduate. It's crazy that he's never been a bad guy in a Herbie movie because I feel like he fits that category like with David Tomlinson and Harvey Korman really well. But the closest he comes is in Herbie Fully Loaded, which features a cameo from Kit because he did the voice of the car on Knight Rider. And Jeffrey Kleiser plays the lookout who is on the ship at the beginning of the movie. Jeffrey Kleiser is obviously brother of Randal Kleiser and the co-founder of the Kleiser Walchak visual effects house that did all the visual effects for Flight of the Navigator. He was at the screening that we went to.
Yeah. Okay.
We just saw Flight of the Navigator at the Egyptian recently, and Randall and his brother were both there as a part of the panel that they did.
It was actually a really cool screening. They talked about some of the revolutionary effects that they did in that movie.
They had to build all their software from scratch.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Did they mention where they got the name for Pixar? Or was that directly from
No,
Disney?
someone asked again, but there's no definitive answer. But Pixar does get a mention in Flight of the Navigator, which is technically before Pixar existed, or maybe like right around the same time, like within a year of when Pixar first started using the name. But yeah, I think this is an enjoyable movie.
Well, you missed one.
Well, we have a couple of things to talk about too. Or the rest of the.
Oh, okay.
So I noticed in the credits, Brian May, not that Brian May,
but
that Brian May
from Mad Max.
From Mad Max.
Okay, cool.
So he was,
but he wasn't the composer.
No, he was music coordinator on this one, but he was composer on Mad Max.
Right. Okay. Cool.
The cinematographer, Nestor. I'm gonna butcher his name. Yeah, Nestor Carbonell. No, Nestor. Almendros. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, sir. He was nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, for this movie?
For cinematography. And
that's fair.
And we should mention that this won Razzie for Worst Actress.
For Brooke
Did it really?
Yep. Yes, it did.
That's fair.
It was the inaugural Golden Raspberry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
What? There was, oh my gosh.
That's not fair. We've had a lot of really terrible performances.
We've had a lot of really bad movies here, and this was not one of them. I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she can be really charming and funny when she's trying to be. I think some of her line reads seem like she's not present, but I think that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of going through a lot of trauma.
I also
it
think
felt
at
pretty
the
authentic
time,
to me.
I think in the 80s, people just shit on Brooke Shields no matter what she did. Because
maybe. But she's 14. Why would you shit on her?
For some reason, she was a joke, though. She's 14. Why would you shit on her? That's coming out.
I did read.
I don't want that used out of context against
that
me.
Randal Kleiser really wanted to like up the whole fantasy stuff, so he gave Christopher Atkins a picture of Brooke Shields like months in advance to when they were shooting, because he really wanted them to actually fall in love and to actually have this romance. But it's like this like 14-year-old and this like 18-year-old.
He's like 18 or 19. Yeah,
it's like okay.
Yeah, that is very weird.
But they hated each other.
Yeah, when they got to the island, apparently it was like a Dirty Dancing situation, right? Where they didn't really
where Patrick Swayze
they
was
didn't really
awful.
get along very well behind the scenes.
Which I think actually is a credit to how good the acting in this movie is if they actually hated each other, because you look at those scenes and I think that they're
being very sweet.
Yeah, they look authentically like they care about each other.
But it also makes the scenes when they're angry much more like
visceral.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just ad-libbed the coconut throw.
Yeah. That was not in the script.
That was a real concussion.
I think I do need to draw attention to one person in the credits, Aphrodite Kondos, who was the wardrober, who I'm guessing had to be on set for one day out of all of the filming.
Right.
That couldn't have been a super difficult job. No offense.
I don't know. It might have been a lot of work to make sure that you always glued her hair to her boobs.
But is that wardrobe or makeup?
That's a good. It's a fine line. Fine line.
Hair and makeup / wardrobe.
Yeah, this is a jurisdictional problem here.
Yeah.
let's talk to the unions.
You have to talk to the union head.
Exactly. But overall, like rewatching it, I was a little like surprised how enjoyable it was, considering when I watched it, probably far too young as a kid. I just remembered it being kind of like this like movie, and then I think I had low expectations, and then rewatching it again as an adult, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like they're trying to portray this kind of innocence and like Edenic kind of portrayal of human nature. I mean, they got a few things obviously a little off, but I thought it was kind of sweet, you know, and none of the nudity or the sexuality was very gratuitous or out of place. It was just like, oh, you're stuck on an island and you have no one else to talk to. And of course, you're attractive young man and woman.
I remember this movie from watching it again, also very young. And first of all, it's a lot better than I think I remembered it being, but it's also a lot less risque than I remember, because when I was really, really young watching it, I was like, oh my God, this is scandalous, you know, as a kid. And now watching it back, I'm like, oh no, this is
actually
just
pretty tame.
Pretty realistic.
And I never saw it as a kid, as I mentioned earlier, but I had seen the DVD on a shelf at Walmart or something, and I always just thought it was some filthy movie that was basically pornography, because I was a young kid and just saw this picture of basically naked people on the cover, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's out here in public.
Shouldn't that be behind the curtain over there?
And if I had actually seen the movie, I probably still would have been scandalized at that age. But looking at it now, it's every scene where there is nudity, it is pretty innocent. And I didn't get to watch it again to try and figure this out. But I think, like, of course, you don't actually see sexual activity portrayed directly on screen.
Right.
You see kisses, and then it's, like, heavily hinted at. And they're, like, lying close together where they're wearing probably nothing.
I think the closest you get to something explicit is, like, nude straddling that happens. But aside from that, there's no like thrusting or anything.
Yeah, and then after, if I'm not mistaken, like sometimes when they go swimming, they're like wearing their loincloths and stuff. And I think that happens like anytime after there's been any kind of hint at sexual activity, like when they're swimming, they're covered. It's almost if that, I don't know for sure if that's right, because I'd have to watch it again, and I don't need to like.
Well, you definitely see you can definitely see a lot underwater. Both the boy and the girl, whether they're body doubles or really them, you definitely see a lot. And there's just a couple of scenes where the camera's like far enough away where, like, you know, if you're watching this in HD, you could probably see it, but maybe back in the day when they were showing this theatrically, maybe you couldn't see it as well.
Yeah, it's like the opening of a James Bond movie where you're like, was that a nipple? I don't know.
I think they were trying to like have the nudity, any scene where there was nudity, have it be like this innocent kind of Edenic look at just people, and have it be very practical. Whereas where there was anything sexual happening, then you're like, that's all off screen. Yeah. At least my interpretation is that's probably the approach they were taking.
And I don't remember much. I don't remember much about the sequel as far as the nudity, because I always ever saw it on TV, the 1991 version. And so I don't know.
I only got the first half of it watched before we started, but there was almost no nudity.
Yeah, so that's what I figure. I
don't remember it.
I figure it probably has virtually none, if none at all.
I think the early 80s though was less worried about that stuff. Yeah. Like you have PG-13 movies that have dicks in them. Yeah. Or like
what was the Franco Zeffirelli
the Romeo and Juliet.
Which is my favorite. Yeah. We just recently watched the Baz Luhrmann one, but the 1968 one is the best.
And this was before the PG-13 rating existed, right?
Right, because it was before Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if this movie at the time, I actually don't know what it was rated.
I think Temple of Doom was the first PG-13, right?
Well, no, Temple of Doom was PG, but Spielberg was upset. He's like, no, we need to have something. He spearheaded the campaign to have that. The first official released PG-13 movie, I believe, was Red Dawn.
Oh, okay. And that's for violence, I guess, or
and it wasn't the first to be given the rating, but it did come out before the other movie. I can't remember the title of the other one.
But I do think it was important to Randal Kleiser that that everything was tasteful.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want people to look at this film the wrong way. Right. But it also makes me wonder how easily they could have pulled that off if the people were naked for the entire movie. I feel like that should never have even been on the table as an option, because it would be hard to do that and have people still call it tasteful. Not impossible, just difficult, I think. What do you guys give this, a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Would you recommend this for people?
Depends on the people.
It depends on the context.
There
I
are some
guess.
people I would never recommend this to, and others I would. I'd say it's certainly interesting for discussion and for analyzing it for the sake of film and story and talking about romanticism and all these ideas about people living in nature versus being around society, and certainly some of that you saw at the beginning of the 20th century. And yeah, it's certainly thought-provoking. I'd at least say that. So I'd recommend it. I'd say one thumb up, one thumb down, depending on who I'd recommend it to.
Sure. It's not like you're the new person in your office. You're like, oh, by the way, if you haven't seen Blue Lagoon, rent it tonight.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me until you've watched Blue Lagoon.
It did score, what, a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes out of, like...
Wow.
Did you just say 9?
Yeah, 9%. Which makes me want to like it more.
Me? I do really like this movie. Yeah. I give it a big thumbs up.
I think this movie may have been a punchline when it came out.
Well,
and
the critics destroyed it, but it made tons of money.
Right, because it cost almost nothing.
Yes, compared to what it cost.
And it had good-looking naked people in it.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah, that does well globally.
What'd you give it? Thumbs up?
I would say a thumbs up for this one for me. This is something I would say it's a more of a good film than a bad film in my head. Like I would recommend that people get out and see this one if they haven't seen it.
Agreed.
I think I liked it a lot more than you guys then, because it's pretty high on my list of movies.
It's not low on my list. I give it a thumbs up. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and again, because I do get it confused with the other one. But I fully enjoyed this movie, and I don't think it's deserving of Brooke Shields getting a raspberry compared to other things that we've seen.
That was
but we're going to reassess. Yeah, we're at the end of the year. We're going to reassess all the Razzies and the Oscars and everything.
Oh, interesting.
We're going to correct all those mistakes.
Oh, good.
Letterboxd list. This is we've been keeping track. This is the 77th film in our year, so we've been scoring them all in order. Jess, where's this going in your list?
So it goes pretty darn high in my list. It goes in slot number 13 for the year so far, which is below The Long Riders, but above Die Laughing.
Okay. Richard?
I'm putting this just below Stuntman and just above Brew Breaker.
Okay.
It's number 23.
I'm actually putting it, this is 21st place out of 77 titles. It's going above The Blues Brothers and right below Saturn III for me.
Wow. Above The Blues Brothers is pretty high praise. But that's another one I haven't seen that need to.
You know what, though? If you haven't seen it already, you're not going to like it as much as everyone tells you.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. I saw The Blue Lagoon. I don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. You just need one blue movie from 1980
yes,
and you're good.
Indeed.
If you need an island movie to watch, you need to watch The Island.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That's another one to check out for sure.
That one is amazing.
Did you guys want to plug anything on your side?
Yeah, I'm on a podcast called The Con Guy Comic-Con Prep Show. We talk about just the news of the convention circuit, what conventions are actually still on. Right now we've been talking about which ones are delayed and canceled and when they're moving to, if they've got somewhere to be. But we're usually on Monday nights. Yeah, you can check out theconguy.com. It's news about all the convention world and general things about geekdom.
Cool. And we'll throw a link in the show notes, too, so people can find the show. But I think that's about everything for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, we're Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd, where, as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. We can also be found at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show, and if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can support the show through patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing How to Beat the High Cost of Living, which IMDb could not succinctly summarize, so I will. 3 women plot to steal a ball full of money from a shopping mall anniversary celebration.